deal with this subject, my lord, on the judicial side. Your lordships are not examining a prohibition against marriage. My lord, kindly bear this distinction is mine. There is no prohibition amongst LGBTQ plus community to marry. Your lordships are not examining the validity. Your lordships are being requested to confer a legal status of marriage. My propositions, my lord. I'll just, my lord, one of, my lord, there are 10 propositions, my lord. My lord, the very heart of Special Marriage Act, and I'll show that, is a recognition of marriage between a conventional man and a conventional woman. Your lordships need not, Lord, write, because I have, Lord, in that page 3, my lord, I have, my lord, written them. Second, the request, my lord, and I will demonstrate, my lord, more effectively. The request ultimately is that you please rewrite to suit our situation, which can be done by the parliament. I am not, my lord, opposed to the situation or some regulation coming into place. By whom is the question? And that rewriting would not be possible my lord, this also, your lordships need not, my lord, invest, my lord, time or energy, my lord, in writing it. This rewriting is not permissible, not only on the ground that the courts would not rewrite the law or say what the law should have been, but the thing which we are now seeking to achieve, the petitioners are seeking to achieve, was consciously omitted in Special Marriage Act. That is one more reason it cannot be read into it. I'll, my lord, make that submission good. So, my lord, your lordship's exercise would be constrained, my lord, by 4 fundamental principles. One, the court will not change the character of the law. And the character, your lordship, will have to examine from the entire architecture of the act, read with all allied statutes and the history which preceded enactment of the Special Marriage Act. Second constraint would be the court cannot substitute the legislative intent which is otherwise manifest. And third, your lordships will not, my lord, read words of larger amplitude in place of words of smaller amplitude, namely, person is a word of larger amplitude in place of male and female. Next, my lord, proposition. Lord, this exercise, even if your lordships are persuaded to undertake, would necessarily have an unintended impact on the heterosexual couples, because Special Marriage Act essentially is for regulating the marriages between intra-faith heterosexual couples. Now, I'm sorry. Next proposition is, your lordships would not, my lord, undertake an exercise whereby the same statute is applicable differently to one class of persons and totally differently to another class of persons, namely heterosexuals and non-heterosexuals.
Where the same statute is applicable
to different classes of
So we
persons,
use,
my lord, namely heterosexuals and non-heterosexuals.
so we use one lens for heterosexual couples and another lens for non-heterosexual couples.
Yes, my lord. And I'm grateful, my lord. I could not put it that succinctly, my lord, but that's the respectful submission. And it would be impossible for your lordships to reconcile this classification. I'll be able to show from the scheme and structure of the Special Marriage Act. Next, my lord. Lord, we are dealing with, let us understand what we are dealing with. Lord, we say LGBTQAI plus. Correct, my lords? We know L stands for lesbians, G for gays, B for bisexuals, T for transgenders, Q for queers, I for intersex, A for asexual. Look, we have not tried to know what plus means. And my lord, this is going to be the core of the problem which your lordship would face if the judiciary were to take over the function of regulating the relationship after recognizing it as a socio-legal relationship. Lord, there are 72 shades or variations. That is why, my lord, what we write is plus. And please examine, my lord, how your lordships would, even if your lordships are persuaded to, my lord, kind of undertake an exercise of rewriting, my lord, deal with these varieties of situations. My lord, please allow me to place, my lord, that, my lord, at page. I'll just, my lord, give some examples to, my lord, annexure A, page 109.
Of what, Mr. Solicitor?
My lord, of my written submissions, my lord.
We just go to
There are several different shades and spectrums, my lord. It's not that we are dealing with either lesbians and gays and transgenders. We are dealing with, my lord, it is note 1, submissions on the question that only legislature can deal with the subject matter. I'll just, my lord, give some examples. I'm not going to read all 72 categories. Lord, can I, for ready reference, my lord, give the physical copy?
No.
PDF 113.
Where all these definitions are given.
Yes. My lord, kindly, my lord, now visualize your lordships were to give recognition to LGBTQ plus, which is an unidentified class of persons, and there are at least 160 statutory provisions in different statutes. How, my lord, we will be able to reconcile with this, my lord, different spectrums and shades? Please see first, agender. A person who does not, your lordship gets, my lord, the Chief Justice,
Yes.
your ladyship gets, my lord. A person who does not identify themselves with or experience any gender. A gender person are also called null gender, genderless, gender void, or gender neutral. Please see 3. I'm just giving, my lord, a flavor, my lord, that it's impossible to reconcile by in a judgment. My lord, even Parliament will have to undertake a humongous exercise if the Parliament as a policy decides to recognize the marriage. A gender that is indefinable or indomitable, people identifying with this gender refuse to be categorized in any particular gender identity. So whether they are man or woman, which provision of which law which governs either man or woman, Lord, will be a big question. Then 4, also called avious gender, this gender identified changes according to one's surroundings. This is kind of a fluid. There is nothing, my lord, specific. Then 6, this is based on the person's mood swings or fluctuations. So a person can be having, my lord, male sexuality for some time and a female sexuality for some time, and say at the time of divorce, if a lordships were to read person and they get the recognition of marriage under the Special Marriage Act, Lord, what would be their gender when we test, Lord, the grounds of divorce?
What is the source of this table, Mr. Solicitor?
Lord, this is, Lord, I don't think, Lord, it is. There are various sources, my lord, but essentially from.
Must be taken from somewhere, some glossary or something like that.
Medicine net.
Turn to the previous page. It gives it the footnote. Courses, medicine, either.
But, my lord, I have checked up from 2-3 sources. This list is consistent.
Yes, yeah,
You've
you have given in your footnote
In the
45
footnote, yes, my lord, I have given medicinenet.com.
on page 108,
Physical 100
footnote 45 at the heading, source
Oh.
medicine net.
Footnote 43, my lord.
What are
45.
the others? 72
45.
others.
Then, my lords, 8. Alexigender, the person has a fluid gender identity between more than one type of gender, although they cannot name the genders they feel fluid in. Then the gender identity stands apart from existing social gender constructs. It means having a strong specific gender identity that is neither male nor female. My lord, transgender, my lord, is different. Transgender, my lord, is conventionally, as we know, is different. Now defined to mean everything, my lord. But transgender means, my lord, the person who has sexual genitals other than what, my lord, he is supposed to be born with. Lord, then amara gender, having a gender identity that changes depending on the person one is emotionally attached to. If a person is emotionally attached to a man, then he has a male sexuality. If woman, then he has a feminine sexuality. Then embonic, the person identifies themselves as both man and woman and yet does not belong to either. Therefore, I repeatedly say this is an unidentifiable class we are dealing with. Then amica gender, a gender fluid identity where a person changes their gender depending on the friends they have. It's also called, my lord, by some as pure gender, my lord. My lord, 18. 17, my lord. Anogender. The gender identity fades in and out in intensity, but always comes back to the same gender feeling. So at particular act, he has one gender identity, then it changes, it comes back. These are not facts I'm giving. I'm without having any value judgment. The only limited purpose of showing is that would it be prudent or possible for the court to lay down, my lord, regulations, even if your lordships are persuaded to confer them with the socio-legal status of marriage. Because then regulating it would be impossible, because there would be 101 contingencies, which my lord, with best of the assistance on our side, your lordships, my lord, cannot conceive of. Then, my lord, kindly turn the page. My lord, 27, exigender, a gender identity that is between the two extremes of agender and any other type of gender. Both the genders are experienced one at a time without any overlapping. The two genders are described as on the opposite ends of an axis. And bigender, having two gender identities at the same or different times. Then 30, blur gender, also called gender fuss. Blur gender means having more than one gender identities that blur into each other so that no particular type of gender identity is clear, etc., my lord, etc. I'm not giving examples, my lord. Now, my lord, your lordships are necessarily dealing with an unidentifiable class. Now, please come to, my lord, page 16 of my written submissions. Lord, would it be prudent or legally permissible, my lord, to deal with this subject, my lord, on the judicial side? Your lordships are not examining a prohibition against marriage. My lord, kindly bear this distinction is mine. There is no prohibition amongst LGBTQ plus community to marry. Your lordships are not examining the validity. Your lordships are being requested to confer a legal status of marriage which all religion considers to be an institution. I'm not on the morality of it, though that would be a valid consideration.